Oh, okay. So you understand the phrase as well, yeah.
He makes a lot of fun jokes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. This is Nina.
Hi, I'm Nina.
I'm Dave, and with Scott, wherever he may be, and Erin. We are Morning Startup. We meet here every 2 weeks. Rain, hail, sunshine included.
Snowing.
No snow here, unfortunately.
It could snow. It could happen.
There's hope. But we meet here every 2 weeks. We've been going since 2012. And the whole point of Morning Startup is to bring awesome people like yourselves together in one room so we can talk about all things tech, all things startup, and also hopefully share some ideas and have an awesome presenter as we have this morning on how to sort of grow your business and how you can hopefully not make some of the mistakes the rest of us made on our journey. So without further ado, smash that next button. So, shameless plugs. Anybody here want to stand up, introduce themselves, tell us what you're working on, and also have an ask, because it's always important, have an ask.
Hi everyone. Well, that's loud. My name's Rowan, and I can juggle.
Oh, that's what's happening.
It's never a dull moment here at Morning Startup.
And if your startup doesn't need someone who can juggle, I don't know. But no, actually I can program. I've been enjoying working with Perth-based startups here. Recently finished with KiteSight from Better Labs, and I'm looking for my next thing. I'm a React developer, used to Superbase, Drizzle, that sort of thing. But I love learning. I'd love to learn your tech stack. So if you're looking for someone, you know someone who's looking for someone, or you want to see me juggle more, come talk afterwards. Thank you.
Come and talk to me afterwards. I've got 3 positions for developers at the moment.
So you could juggle all 3 of them?
Yes.
Anyone else?
Who else wants to have a...
Can you juggle?
Hi guys, I'm Roman, and if you are a technical founder or CEO looking to get consistent leads from LinkedIn, just talk to me after the event. I'm basically doing ghostwriting and content strategy for businesses to make people interact with your business. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to... You don't need to come to the front, by the way. You can stand up. Here you go. Just
fine.
turn around, face the crowd.
Hi everybody, my name is Michael. Much like Rowan, just finished up with KiteSight with Better Labs, and I've started a company with my friend Nick. We aim to build MVPs as quickly as possible using AI tools. So, within 12 weeks, less than 12 weeks, we aim to get an MVP out. So if you'd like to have a chat, have a coffee, come speak to me. Thanks.
That's exciting.
Anybody else brave enough to stand up? We know who the regulars are, and we know who are not the regulars. And so it's always interesting to see who the newbies are around here. Anybody else brave enough? There's a lot of newbies in this little area down here. Go on then. You can't stand up.
Good morning, I'm Sammy. This is Tayana. We represent a business called ServeCorp. We are the leading virtual office provider solution, with a primary focus on our IT infrastructure network, which we have invested globally over $100 million US dollars into it and continue to do so. We pretty much provide solutions for startups to help grow and expand their business. There's so much more that can really fit into 30 seconds, so we'd love to chat after. Thank you.
Wow, that's amazing.
There you go, sir.
Thank you very much. So my name's Ruben Fields. I run Ruben's Media Productions, photography. We offer services like photography and videography, and also live streaming as well. So if you have any use for those services, please let me know after we finish today. Thank you.
Will do. We always need photography.
Anyone else want to give a last one? No? No other takers? No one around this area? No? Okay. I hope, now that I will hopefully live close to the city, we'll be able to get to one of these, but in the decade I've been doing Morning Startup, and in the decade that Scott's been running Founders Sundowner, I've never been able to get to one, so I hope so, and I hope to see some of you there when I do go. So Founders Sundowner, first Wednesday of every month, other side of nowhere in West Leaderville from 5:30. We don't pay for the beer unless there's a sponsor here that wants to pay for the beer. No. But we do put on pizzas, I think.
Yeah.
Am I right in saying that?
It's really delicious and really fun as well. Anyway.
So I'll let you do this one, VentureX.
Okay, so we have a masterclass for aspiring angel investors and investor pitch rumble. Also known as there will be a bunch of investors at this event. So I would definitely suggest going. It's, you get to learn how investors think. And maybe you could invest as well in startups.
Perfect. Yeah. So if you've got a bit of cash yourself and you're looking to invest, scan the QR code. They're basically looking to see if they can make any of you angel investors.
Yeah. Oh.
Okie dokie. We could not do this without the help of JITSI or the Department of Jobs, Tourism, Science and Innovation. Thank you to them. Through them, they give us the New Industries Fund, which allows us to stream it to the regions. Hi, Joondalup. Anybody else watching? I will also say hi to Jesse over in Victoria because I know he will be watching. Hi, Jesse.
Hi.
We miss you. Come back soon. But they run some great initiatives here. They've got the Innovator of the Year. That's been and gone, but every year that comes up. All the way through to the Waves program, CyberWest, and most importantly, dealroom.co. Who's been on dealroom.co? Yeah? Go and check your profile out. If it's not on there, you'll see lots of information on startups around in WA. And if your company is listed there, make sure you update it. Give them some information.
Yeah.
So thank you to the New Industries Fund for sponsoring the live camp.
Thank you. Ooh, and we get to be on video, which is very exciting. So we have like a collection of all talks as well on our meetup page. And that is thanks to the perthvideo.com.au.
If you want to go back and check out Perth Video, scan the QR code. There is every
Yes.
one that we've done for at least the last, good couple of years is on there. We've had everything from Purpose Ventures, telling you how to get investment ready. Super great talk there from Derek and Kylie. Very, very interesting. Right the way through to how to grow more LinkedIn leads from Enwado a few weeks back. So definitely check that out. And most importantly, to Cam and the team and to Jack Ammo for sponsoring as well. They basically have a boutique marketing company here in Perth. Most importantly, check out the Weird Growth podcast. I think it's every month. There's a lot of regular ones. They're not that, the cadence isn't too great, but they are fairly regular. They've got a lot of people like Scott there sharing his ideas and stories on there, and there's a lot of famous people on there as well, a few big ones. So check out the Weird Growth podcast.
I love it. Thank you, Vision Group.
Do you want to do your own?
Yes. You always give such good advice.
Oh, can I just say,
Such
this
good
man
advice.
here, so last time I was here, I wasn't here a couple of weeks ago, but the one before that, we were talking about CVs and AI and stuff like that, and I was like, wow, we've got developer roles going, and we've had literally 92 people apply, and I've got to be honest, half the CVs on them, they were lying, absolutely lying. It was complete bullshit on them. Sorry for those. And we were so surprised, and it was exactly what you said. There's a lot of fibs being told.
And more to come, guys. Sorry. So there's two quick things to pick up on Dave's point. Thank you for believing when I say. All right. Just picking quickly on Dave's thread or the point. So I was at a really boring presentation by industry group about 2 weeks ago by the economists about where Australia's future growth rate is going to be and what that means for hiring and employment growth. Two quick things for you guys from a takeaway perspective is, one, the number of applications that you're going to receive is going to get close to 50% will have, let's use the word, untruths in them. Fibs, basically. And that's going to create a massive impact to you because you're going to have a number of extra applications that you'll also have to deal with to meet privacy rule obligations. So make sure if you are hiring someone that you deal with that problem. So that's number one. Two, you'll get blindsided by the fact you think that you've got all these great applications. Half of them will be bullshit. The second thing will mean that they won't actually be engaged. So when you spend all that time and effort and then you want to come and hire at the end, you'll probably find that the offer to hire rate will be low. So that'll be something that this young man is clearly showing the pain from it as well. But that's that one. Anyway, my tip today for you guys is one. If you go to a networking event and meet someone that you would potentially like to, I'll use the term build a working relationship going forward, for God's sakes, just follow up in some way, shape or form, and the more that you can personalise that, the better. So by all means, connect up via LinkedIn and all that sort of good stuff, but just that little bit of extra personalisation, so just that human touch is what's missing more and more too. And that's where the big disconnect is at the moment, because everyone thinks it's all about AI and tech and what have you. The personalisation part is key.
Thank you very much, Scott.
Thank you.
That's Scott, Glenn even.
That
And
was
if you are
amazing.
looking for a job and your CV is correct, check out Glenn.
Keep space.
Thank you. If we haven't noticed, there's two things here. We'll go back to them, but there's food at the back, so like Jessie for,
All the great food.
great food at the back there. So Jessie, who knows what 3PO is? 1 for 2 people, that's more than 3. Excellent. So if you've got an online shop, who's got an online shop? I always think there'd be more. But
No.
if you are looking to ship your goods, then check out Keepspace, amazing company. They've got depots here in Perth and in Victoria, growing awesomely. And thank you Keepspace, and thank you Jessie for the gorgeous food.
Yeah, it's really good. And they have like a bunch of options as well. So tiers, depending on where you are at as well. So I had a look, it's good. Purpose Ventures, investing in purpose-driven founders. Who had coffee today?
So we have a new sponsor. We have Purpose Ventures. So a big round of applause to Purpose Ventures for giving us the
How
coffee.
exciting.
Who hasn't had a coffee yet? Make sure you go down to
Yeah.
Joey Zazaz, tell them that you're from Morning Startup, and thank Kirsty, Food from Purpose this morning, for the coffee. So every fortnight going forwards, we no longer have Tekken, they've moved on, they've left us for Sydney.
Or whatever.
And we now have Purpose. So thank you very much. And if you are looking for investment, Purpose is the only VC here in WA. Go and check them out. Purpose.ventures. Submit your awesome slide deck and see if you can get some funding.
Yeah, and you could see the presentation on how to create a great pitch deck as well.
So go back to Perth Video and check out how to get investor ready prior. And last but not least, we're going to run through this. SpaceCube give us a space for free. Thank you, SpaceCube. Plus 8, great cohorts. If you're looking to learn how to run a business, check out Plus 8. They will be probably launching the new cohort. Are you still doing that?
I'm not, but it'll launch, I guess, in the next month.
It's going to happen shortly. Always around this time of year, there'll be applications for the main cohort, so check it out. Keep an eye out. Register for updates.
Yeah.
Startup WA Advocates and Startup News. Get your news in your inbox every Friday. So we're running behind, but check out this for all the accelerators and stuff that's going on. Lots
a
happening,
bunch of
lots happening
yeah.
here in the ecosystem.
It's good for us because then you can choose something that's tailored for you.
And you can hit us up if you want to give us a presentation. Hit us up, and we'll basically love to sort of share what you've got to share.
Yes.
And main one I would probably say is contact@morningstartup.com. That comes through to all. And the Slack group, yes.
Just reach out to us in Slack. It's fun. It's exciting.
Cool. Next, in a couple of weeks, we have my LinkedIn video experience.
Wait, this happened already.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was like going, Scott.
We're not traveling to the park.
I was reading it and my head's going, that was the last one. Maybe it was so good we need to do a repeat.
Sorry, I just got to manually correct that with my voice, so you can see how I do these slides. But that's the right photo, just the wrong text. So she's going to be talking about wellness and how to be well when you are a startup founder. I think we both know all too well that, holy crap, this is hard. We get tired, we get stressed, we get freaked out. So how do you maintain a good headspace while being a startup founder? As you can tell. All right, thank you.
Okay. That's the formalities out of the way. We will keep doing this joke for the next decade if we have to, until we get a few laughs. Thank you very much. Anyway, thank you to Kirsty for introducing us to Simon. Simon's over from the UK. Hands up here who's got aspirations of going global and going to the UK. Yeah? No one else? I know I do. I was until the government changed stuff, but definitely looking to go to the UK. Huge market, 67 million people living in on an island that will fit into Western Australia, I think it's 11 times.
Oh.
So, you know, just to give you the context of that together means that, you know, it's maybe a little bit easier. Obviously, there's more competitors there, but it's a great market to go to, and also a great market to enter into other countries as well. So we've got Scaling Your Startup to the UK. I'd like to welcome Simon to the stage, if there was one. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, there we go. Look, thanks. Oh, are you going to? Oh, thank you very much for that, Scott. Thanks to Purpose Ventures, Space Cubed, and Morning Startup for having me here to talk this morning. I am originally from Perth. I've lived in the UK for about 20 years, but my mum and I've still got family here, so I make a reasonably regular appearance. But for my sins, I'm a lawyer, and I work for a professional services firm by the name of Oury Clark. We're based in London. I'm just going to skip through a couple of slides, or maybe not.
Yeah, just use the arrow.
That's fine. This is not death by PowerPoint, but there's just kind of like a bunch of stuff that I find when we talk to businesses who are kind of starting out on their journey and thinking about expanding into the UK, that if you kind of just keep in the back of your mind, it will kind of help when you're kind of at that point where you need to start kind of like moving abroad. So I will skip through a number of things here, but as I said, sort of Oury Clark is a professional services firm where lawyers and accountants, we have 2 offices, one in central London, one out near Heathrow Airport. We have 185 staff and we're growing. So we're one of the fastest growing privately owned firms in the UK working in this space. I am not 87 years old, although I feel like it, and clearly we skimp on talent when we do photo shoots, so you get to see people like me in my work environment laughing at whatever. But anyway, the company was founded, in fact, in 1935, so I think this slide's a little out of date because I think my maths I think it's our 90th anniversary coming up. But the name Oury Clark, the Ourys are real, the Clarks are not. There is no Clark. But if you ever come and visit our office, you will actually meet a bunch of Ourys because there are 4 generations of the family that work in the business. But as we like to tell everyone, there are more non-Ourys who are partners of the firm than there are Ourys. We remind them of that regularly. Over the last 30 years or so, when we've kind of primarily focused on working outside of the UK, working with founders across all jurisdictions, moving into the UK, we've helped over about 3,000 plus companies. And you know, there are some big names, some Australian unicorns, but the reality is that most of these companies, when we started working for them, when they moved to the UK, had 1 or 2 people on the ground. So you know, we've kind of been there to sort of keep provide legal software, released West Australian Wellco, Employment Hero. So some big names, but the important thing to remember is that when they came to the UK, there was probably just 1 or 2 people, and they probably had little or no knowledge of what life was like working in the UK market. One of the really interesting things, and in fact I was talking to someone from here yesterday, is that everyone thinks just because we speak the same language that doing business is the same. It's not. It's quite different. I can see lots of people nodding, so I don't need to do too much more on that. But one question that we often get asked is about what's the difference between trading with the UK and trading in the UK. So if you happen to ship or provide goods or services to customers in the UK, let's say you're based here in Perth and you're contracting with the UK entity and you have no one on the ground in the UK, then that's called trading with the UK. The only thing that you kind of need to think about, there are some tax implications, but often before proper market entry, people will actually start trading with the UK. So you might kind of get 1 key contract, and then off the back of that contract, you might have a reason to set up in the UK. So, sorry, I didn't think there was any builds in these slides, but there we go. And then, of course, trading in a country is when you actually have a physical presence in the UK, well, anywhere in the world, but in the UK. You may hear this term, people talk about PE. PE stands for a permanent establishment. One thing that companies, and this is my first tip for you, is that if you are doing any sort of activity in the UK, even though you may not have a physical presence, but let's say you contract someone to do some market development activities, what you need to be careful of is that you're not actually creating a taxable presence for your Australian company in the UK. So the rules around permanent establishments are kind of reasonably complex, but the thing to keep in mind, and my key point here, is do take advice before you start doing anything in the UK to make sure that you're not inadvertently requiring a tax return to be filed in the UK. So a couple of things, other things that we often get asked is, what is the most common legal structure for companies setting up in the UK? You will be familiar, obviously, with a private limited company in the UK. Most companies that are moving into the UK market will incorporate a wholly owned subsidiary of their, in this case, Australian company. It's called a limited company, and it's pretty easy to set up. I'm a slide ahead of myself, but anyway, just going back to permanent establishment, key point is if you're doing any activity, just make sure you haven't created that permanent establishment. On company formation, it takes less than 24 hours actually to incorporate a company in the UK. A couple of key things: you don't have to have any UK resident directors, very different to Australia. The only thing that you do need to have is a UK registered office address, and Oury Clark and a bunch of other people provide that service generally as part of kind of being a client. I think we have over 800 or 900 companies that use one of our offices as their registered office address. There's no requirement to have any paid up capital. If any of you have had experience in any other countries in Europe, often if you incorporate a company in kind of other parts of Europe, you will require a fairly chunky amount of paid up capital, but there's no requirement for any paid up capital in the UK. So key things are no requirement to have a UK resident director, although you might want one, and I'll talk about that a little bit further down the line. Key thing is that you just need to have a UK registered office address, and the registrar of companies, so the equivalent of ASIC in the UK, has a name search facility. So if you are thinking of incorporating a company and you want to know whether you can use your Australian company name in the UK, there's actually a little link on the Companies House website that enables you to search for that. So a couple of things that you can actually take a look at fairly easy, and it does. We've got a team of people that do incorporations, and they're doing them all day, every day, but it's pretty quick and easy process. Once you actually set up a company in the UK, even if you're not trading, and often people will set up a company sort of ahead of actually having a kind of a physical presence there, there's two things that you're required to do. One is you're required to file a set of accounts, but if you've got a company that's not trading, it's a set of dormant accounts and not particularly expensive to file. And on an annual basis, you need to make a statement to the registrar of companies about your company. You need to say whether there's been any shares issued, whether you've changed your directors, whether you've changed any of your address or anything like that. But they're the kind of the two key compliance requirements, and Oury Clark will provide services and can help in that area as well. One interesting thing that you need to be aware of, and it's the first point there, is that when you do have to file proper accounts in the UK, those accounts are available on the public record. So it is kind of, look, everyone just accepts the fact that you have to file your accounts. What's really interesting is if you're ever interested in looking to see what your competitors are actually up to, you can actually go onto the Companies House website, you can do a search for a competitor's company name, and you can see their account. So, there's a lot of interesting information available on the public record. An interesting thing that is worth noting as well, probably doesn't apply to anyone in this room at the moment, but it might do in the future, is that if you are part of a global group and your revenue, your top line revenue is more than £10.2 million, or you have more than 50 staff, or you have net assets of around about 5 million on your balance sheet, if you breach two of those three thresholds, then your UK company is required to do an audit. So there's no statutory requirement for an audit until you get to a certain size in the UK. But if you're part of a group company that breaches two of those three thresholds and you have a UK company, the UK company itself is subject to an audit. Often, American companies in particular forget this fact, and it's kind of quite problematic to go back and kind of do historical audits and stuff like that. So keep that in mind. I'm sure we're all aspiring to kind of have a group that has that kind of that revenue and those assets, but something worth keeping in mind. I'm not an accountant. I'm not going to bore you with anything too dreary in relation to tax, but my accounting colleagues would require me to tell you that corporation tax in the UK is anywhere between 19 and 25%. Obviously, corporation tax is only payable if you're actually making a profit rather than a loss. VAT, which is the same as GST, is 20%. If you have a company that's providing, so for example, if we were providing services to you and you didn't have a UK presence, we're not required to charge you VAT because you're outside the scope of VAT. But the moment you have a presence in the UK, then anyone providing services or goods to you in the UK has to charge VAT on the invoice. VAT is like GST, it's an input-output tax, and you do quarterly VAT returns. We have no payroll tax in the UK. But employers do pay. There's two things that employers pay. One is national insurance and the national insurance rates. So effectively, it's a tax. Well, it's an employer and an employee tax, but the employer national insurance rate, as of the 1st of April, is going up to 15%. But we often get asked whether there's payroll tax. There isn't actually tax on your total payroll, but there are other taxes to be aware of. A common question or subject for discussion, particularly when people are thinking about moving into the UK, is about kind of hiring employees. Clearly, everyone sort of wants to sort of get their first person on the ground. It is reasonably, at the moment, and there are some changes coming, but I won't reflect too much on that, but it's reasonably easy to hire and fire people in the UK. So we're not nearly as kind of ruthless as the Americans are, but you know, if you employ someone and you can give them a probation period, and you can actually pretty much terminate their employment on very, very short notice during their probation period. And then after that, if you do need to get rid of them, you can actually get rid of them so long as you follow a fair process. At the moment, you don't really have to follow a fair process until after they've had 2 years of service. Our new Labor government, who are doing some fantastic things on one hand and some not so great things on the other, are actually talking about making the right not to be unfairly dismissed a day one right. But I wouldn't worry too much about it, because one thing that kind of SMEs or small and medium-sized businesses that have worked out in the UK is often with these policies there are loopholes and there are ways to kind of manage your business. So don't be put off by kind of things that you might be hearing about in relation to changes to employment rights and conditions in the UK. Just on that, and sort of talking about recruitment, London itself, London salaries are pretty chunky, and London is a fairly expensive place to live. But for a lot of businesses, a lot of smaller businesses, if you kind of look outside of London, it kind of, you know, there are major centres that, you know, like Manchester and Birmingham and sort of Cambridge and Oxford, where salaries are much, much cheaper because the cost of living is much, much cheaper. So if you ever talk to a recruiter to get a guideline about what a salary might be, always ask them to give you a regional salary and a London salary, just so you can get a sense of the reality, and it'll be somewhere in between. I spoke about employers' national insurance. There's two things that as an employer, so when you set up a company and you start to employ people, there are, in addition to paying national insurance, you have to set up a statutory pension. I mean, you guys know superannuation, you've had superannuation for years and years. It's relatively new in the UK, and it's referred to as an auto-enrolment pension. It's where our government's not very good at kind of creating creative names, but it's called auto-enrolment because when you start working, your employer has to opt you into the pension scheme, and then as an employee, you can opt out of that scheme if you want. The contributions at the moment are a total of 8%, so in addition to your 15% national insurance, if you're setting up or if you've got employees in the UK, you're also going to be paying a total of 8%, but as the employer, you only pay 3% of that, and the employee pays 5%. They're the statutory minimums. Lots of people pay more than that. There's a whole bunch of other things that I won't bore you with, but there are... one other thing that I wanted to say is that in addition to the auto-enrolment pension, you also have to have employers' liability insurance, which is effectively the equivalent of workers' compensation. The one thing that really surprised me when I first moved to the UK 20 years ago is that insurance is gobsmackingly inexpensive compared to what it is here, and that's primarily because of obviously the population base. A lot of people will ask us just around employee benefits, whether kind of people are providing kind of car benefits and health benefits and what have you. It's fair to say that it's becoming increasingly more common for employers, but not necessarily small employers, to provide their employees with health insurance. It's quite expensive to get health insurance if you have one employee, but the moment you have two employees or more, the costs come right down because, of course, the insurers can amortise the actual policy across the kind of health of your population. One thing that's worth knowing as well is that if you do kind of get to the point where you are setting up in the UK and you have kind of people from Australia that you want to move to the UK, at the moment, if you were to send them there for 2 years or less, then there are a whole bunch of tax reliefs that they, as the individual, are entitled to. So at the moment, any of our staff are not able to claim their commuting costs between their where they live and their place of work. If you have an employee who's seconded, that employee can actually claim their commuting costs. You're also able to make a contribution to rent and to council tax and a whole bunch of things that if my employer gave me that, it would be taxed. I would be taxed on that as an employee, but if you're seconded to the UK, you're not. Now, the really interesting thing about secondment is that it's a 2-year period, but it's the intention, you must only have an intention to send them there for 2 years, which means that at the very, very end of that 2-year period, you could actually change that intention and leave them there for longer. They would never lose the benefit that they had acquired from being a secondee for the first 2 years, but they would just go kind of onto normal tax. So again, just something worth thinking about. While we're talking about kind of moving people, obviously the question of, well, how do I get a visa to work in the UK comes up all the time. You may have read a whole bunch of stuff in the press about how difficult kind of migration is from a UK perspective. One of the things, there have been two really, really kind of tangible positive outcomes from the UK-Australia Free Trade Agreement. One of those is that if you happen to be under the age of 35 and you've never had a work permit for the UK, then you can actually get what is known as a youth mobility visa fairly quickly and easily. It's probably the simplest visa to get. Australians often forget that if they have a British-born grandparent, they can also get a UK ancestry visa. So again, if you are thinking of either moving yourselves to the UK for a bit and you don't have a British passport or no right to one, then, and if you're under 35, then always look at the youth mobility visa, or if you've got a British-born grandparent, you can get an ancestry visa. Simple and easy. If you can't do any of those, there are a whole bunch of other really interesting visas, particularly for entrepreneurs and sort of people who are kind of moving or kind of thinking of making a substantial investment in terms of people in the UK market. They change their names a little bit, but you might hear names like Global Talent Visa or Innovator Visa. Effectively, if you want to apply for one of those, then you have to find an endorsing body in the UK. If the endorsing body kind of goes, yeah, you're fabulous, you can come here, then you then apply to the government for a visa. So for entrepreneurs, it's actually reasonably straightforward. If failing all of that, you can also, once you've got a company, well, there's two things you can do. Once you've got a company set up in the UK, that company can apply to the UK government to sponsor skilled workers. The issue that you need to think about when if that's where your mind is at, is that in order to do that, you need to have a UK bank account. And I'll come on to that a little bit later. And you need to have been registered for all the kind of relevant taxes in the UK. If there is also another visa type that you may hear about if you speak to people, and it's called an International Expansion Worker Visa. That is a very, very similar process to applying to the government to sponsor skilled workers, but effectively your Australian company can apply to be that sponsor. So there are some subtle differences between the two, but the reality is no matter what you hear about immigration in the UK, there are always, on the whole, ways to get yourself or your staff across there. The UK government, like most governments of the world, have some very, very good incentives to kind of encourage businesses to either kind of set up or undertake research and development activities in the UK. The UK has quite a generous R&D tax credit scheme. It's quite similar to the Australian scheme. You can, I think, get up to 33% cash back based on, but you've got to be undertaking innovative research and development work. Most tech companies are. I won't go into the kind of the nitty-gritty of the scheme, but it's worth just remembering that if you are doing unique R&D work in the UK, there is a rebate scheme. Finally, whilst you now have Purpose Ventures here in WA or in Perth, the UK is also a fantastic place to raise money. There is still continues to be a lot of money around for kind of start-up and scale-up businesses. And there's lots of organisations, there's lots of kind of people who are able to connect you to VCT or to venture capital, private equity, family offices, that type of thing. A couple of things that you might hear, you might hear some terms known as EIS or VCT. So the UK government has a very, very attractive tax incentive for investors in small private companies, which is called EIS, and basically you get a 30% discount off your tax if you're making an investment in qualifying companies. A lot of Australian companies will ask us whether they're actually able to raise money and take advantage of kind of the EIS scheme. If you set yourself up in the UK in the right way, then you can actually take advantage of the EIS scheme. And I won't kind of go into too much detail, but I spoke at the beginning about having a wholly owned subsidiary, so a limited company in the UK. If you were just to incorporate a wholly owned subsidiary in the UK, you couldn't take advantage of the EIS scheme. But if you, alongside of your UK subsidiary, you incorporated or registered a branch of your Australian company and you had one person working in that branch, you've got to run a separate payroll, but you can take advantage of both EIS and VCT. So if you are talking to venture capitalists or even private investors in the UK, they will always ask you whether you qualify or you're set up for EIS and VCT, and you can, the reality is you can set yourself up as an Australian company, so you can take advantage of these ways of raising money. I mean, interestingly, despite everything that we've been through from kind of change of government and what have you, the Labor government have kept a lot of these schemes and they've made them slightly more attractive. SEIS is just a smaller scheme, it's the same as EIS. This doesn't really need kind of too much explanation, but there's a whole bunch of other ways that you can fund businesses, and there's some really interesting. So a lot of businesses, you can, if you're making a reasonably big R&D credit claim, you can actually borrow money. You can borrow against your R&D claim. You can borrow against kind of a whole bunch of other stuff. But we also provide advice on that. As Oury Clark, we are primarily kind of accountants and tax advisors and lawyers, and the way the firm is set up is kind of we're set up to follow the journey of services that you might need, firstly when you move into the UK and then as you kind of scale and grow in the UK. We have a couple of other kind of arrows to our bow, if you like. And one of those is that we have two teams of people, one team that primarily works with businesses who might be kind of struggling to work out whether the UK is the best place for them to set up or whether somewhere else in Europe might be better. Some of you may, or there's a guy, he's also originally from Perth by the name of Paul Webster. Paul runs our kind of market expansion team, and he's kind of got access to a whole bunch of pan-European research. So if you're kind of working in a particular sector, you can kind of say to Paul, okay, look, I'm struggling to work out whether I should be based in Belgium or whether I should put my kind of European kind of operations out of the UK. Paul can reasonably sort of quickly and easily kind of produce a report that has a whole bunch of comparators between the two markets, and that is often kind of used by businesses to help determine where they might go. And particularly if you're sort of your business is focused on sort of biotech or those parts of kind of AI, there's a load of kind of grants and funds around for AI kind of type businesses and what have you. And Paul also has a complete database of all grants and funding that are available to businesses of all size, both in the UK and across other parts of Europe as well. And Paul also works, we've got a consulting division, and within that division, Paul is also working with other foreign governments who are kind of moving or encouraging people to kind of move into different parts of the world. So he's kind of got a very, very good handle on what's going on in most markets. Paul also happens to be a banking specialist, and you may remember that at the very beginning I said you don't need any UK resident directors, but you might want one for a reason. The reason why you might want one is it will actually be easier to open a UK bank account if you have a UK resident director. You hear, and it's true, the UK banks are not, when I say banks, like we call them high street banks, so names like Barclays and NatWest and those type of people, they do put small businesses through an incredible number of hoops before they will open an account for them. It's always easier as a founder or as an entrepreneur if you're moving or setting up in the UK. It's much, much easier to work, to try and sort of do your banking or start your banking relationships in person. Most UK banks won't talk to you if you just ring them and say, I'm thinking of moving my business to the UK, can we talk about opening a bank account? But Paul and his team, they've kind of very, very well connected within the banking network, and we also have relationships with a number of the kind of, I guess, the e-money providers or sort of banks like kind of Wise, Revolut, TransferWise, kind of, all of those people, and Paul is really well placed to kind of go, okay, look, if this is what you expect your turnover for year one to be, then you are better, and you're in this sector, then you're better to go and talk to these three people at these banks. So never forget that we can assist in that, and you will hear some pretty horrible stories about people trying to open bank accounts, but just ignore them. One other growing area of interest amongst particularly businesses that are moving into the UK market is this whole thing about ESG, so environment, sustainability and governance. I don't expect you to read that slide. We've got a team of ESG experts, and what's really relevant for you guys is that if you're moving into the UK market and if you are looking at providing services to local government or to NHS, to the health service, you have to meet certain criteria when it comes to environmental, sustainability and governance reporting. And we have a team of people that are actually able to guide you through that. The other three buckets, and it's kind of easier if our ESG team likes to think in buckets, is that if you're a supplier to a larger company within the UK, it is highly likely that that large company has its own ESG reporting requirements, and mostly those reporting requirements apply to everything in the supply chain. So the important thing is when you hear the term ESG, you don't need to run away from it. It sounds kind of quite daunting. It's not really. It's reasonably straightforward to produce the type of reports that you will often need to produce to satisfy local government, NHS, or large customers. NHS, for those of you who don't know, is the National Health Service. Often, if you're borrowing money from one of the bigger banks, they will also require you now to have some form of ESG or sustainability reporting. And similarly, if you're borrowing or if you're raising money through private equity, a lot of private equity now are requiring their kind of portfolio companies to have committed to ESG. So it's kind of one of those things that a lot of people have ignored for a long time, but the reality is for smaller businesses, it is becoming something that you do need to think about. But again, it's not ridiculously expensive to actually kind of produce a report, and you just need to understand what your obligations are. And then finally, because I am going to stop talking, you don't need to know that. One of my favourite slides is often Aussies kind of think of London or kind of anywhere in the UK as kind of this horribly overpopulated, very kind of built-up city, but it's not. Actually, if you've not been to London, London has a huge amount of green space, and I think kind of most Australians, when they come, once they've kind of got their heads around how many people there are there, they also kind of just flock to the parks like we flock to the beaches here. And this is a very interesting little graph. London ranks probably the highest in the world for Michelin-starred restaurants if you're a foodie versus green space. And in fact, last time I used this, someone in our team did this, but last time I used this slide, the Maria Rennie, who's the British Consul General here, said to me, she said, can I use that? Because it's a fantastic slide. But if you've not been to London, or if you kind of just have this image in your head of London as kind of densely populated and a daunting and scary place to live, it's not. It's a fantastic city, and there's loads of green space. So, and you know, coffee is about the same price, as is beer. So that kind of brings me to the end of my whistle-stop tour of kind of hints and tips about kind of moving to the UK. I know there's a lot to take on board. I'll leave the presentation here. If you have a look at the ouryclark.com website, within the website you'll find a resource library, and we produce a whole bunch of quick guides that actually cover every one of the topics I've spoken about here, plus a whole lot more. I didn't want to bore you by putting a gazillion QR codes on a slide, but it's an incredible resource library. We work, as I say, very closely with Purpose Ventures. We work very closely with London and Partners, UK's Department of Business and Trade. And you know, kind of one of the things that we will do is if you've got any questions at all, or if you kind of like, even if you've got a question about how that works, if you're moving goods into the UK and Europe, then we've got a team of people that will give you a half hour of their time just to kind of point you in the right direction. So, thank you, Dave.
No, thank you. Let's have a round of applause. As a Brit and as someone who worked in London, in North Acton for almost a decade, I've certainly learned some stuff as well about my motherland. Do we have any questions from the crowd? Yours went up first, so we'll go that.
Thanks very much for the presentation. I'm an accountant, so curious to know. You mentioned there about the accounts they go into the public record. I mentioned a liability company. Is there no such thing as a proprietary limited company there? Or?
It's just a limited company. So the PTY the Australian PTY Limited equivalent in the UK is a limited company.
And they still have to...
They still have to file their accounts, yeah.
Are they in accordance with the financial...
Yeah, all with... But you'll often see... I mean, there are kind of for smaller companies, you can file for limited accounts, so you just need to do, kind of a balance sheet. You can basically do 2 pages, but yeah, so... Check
out Companies House. That'll have a lot of information.
Thank you for the good presentation, and thank you for the commentary on the coffee price. As importantly, can you give us some idea of comparative wages and comparative costs for the necessary legal advisors, accounting advisors, those sort of things?
Yeah, I can actually. I mean, surprisingly, lawyers and accountants are comparatively cheaper in the UK than they are here. And a lot of lawyers and accountants in the UK have a very different way of charging. Like, we're very focused on fixed price and fixed fee. I'm sure for most of you, you've probably had experiences where you've gone to a professional advisor and they've said, well, I don't really kind of know until I've got to the end of it how much this is going to cost, but we're very focused on that. You'd be surprised. So, for example, to incorporate a company which requires a reasonable amount of paperwork, it's £750 plus that. So to prepare a set of dormant accounts, you're probably looking at about £1,500. But what I can do is I'll send it to sort of Dave and the crew here. We have a document called Our Services and Fees, and it kind of talks about everything, kind of all the mandatory stuff and the cost of doing that if you're incorporating a company, and then kind of the cost of the ongoing costs. So, for example, what does it cost to process payroll? What does it cost to link your payroll scheme to your pension scheme, that type of thing? You'll find that most of that for us is fixed fee. So, and at any time, if you're at that point where you just want to put a budget together, we've kind of got this natty tool that enables you to go, okay, look, in my first year, I'm going to have 2 people, but at the end of the year, I'm going to employ another 3, and it will actually automatically calculate what your payroll kind of an average cost will be. So it's surprisingly less expensive, and I think that's just the nature of the market. It's much more competitive, so therefore kind of prices are lower. Oh, sorry, on salaries, so it's interesting. So London, yes. So, London salaries are going up and up and up. A lot of employers did not increase employees' salaries because we kind of all got lumbered with a kind of 1.7% increase on our wage bill because of the change in national insurance recently. But if you compare London salaries to here, they're much, much higher. But as I said at the onset, if your business doesn't have to be in London, you can find some exceptional talent kind of mostly around the big universities, so Cambridge, Oxford. If you know the geography, kind of out the Western Corridor, Reading, kind of Bath and Bristol, and you'll find that salaries are kind of like 25% lower because the cost of living is so much lower. I mean, the cost of housing in London is disproportionate to, I could buy, and I have an average house. I could almost buy a village in the north of England for the price of my house. I mean, it's appreciated beyond kind of it's incomprehensible. I couldn't afford to buy it now. But you kind of, if you look at the price of housing kind of in Lincoln, for example, which is not that far from London, literally it's like an eighth of the price. So, and wages, interestingly, kind of reflect housing prices.
Question here.
Yes, thanks so much for your talk. I just have a question about digital services. Like, if you're providing digital services from Australia, are there the same tax and reporting requirements? Is there maybe a threshold? So, like, most of your businesses in the UK, do you...
So if you're a service provider providing services here in Perth to a UK business, then you will be issuing them an invoice. So, and that's completely fine. There's no requirement for you, so long as you don't actually go to the UK and start delivering those services in the UK, there's nothing to stop you just continuing to provide those services. You may cast your mind back, I know it was a long time ago, to the very first slide. That's for us, if you're a service provider, that would be you trading with the UK rather than trading in the UK. So, that's okay.
Any other questions? If you're down the back here. Hands up while I walk down there. Anybody who's thinking about going to the UK? Yeah?
It's worth going to. I mean, there are incredible opportunities. It kind of might be a bit daunting at times, but great opportunities.
Yeah, I just wanted to say you're a wealth of knowledge, man. It's really great.
Thank you.
One thing I was thinking about, like, I build software for a living, and some software is kind of profitable and it's starting to grow, and I've just been mulling it over in my mind, like, when it comes to incorporating, because it's a digital product, like, should I incorporate in Australia, or could I incorporate in a different country and potentially have tax benefits for doing that? Like, what is that something that your business helps with? And is that also a good idea, or am I just completely...
So for you as a software developer, it kind of really depends on ultimately where you see the main market for your product. So if you're requiring a mass market as opposed to a specialist vertical, then the UK is an incredible place because, as Dave said, I mean, there's 72 million people there. It's one of the kind of biggest English-speaking, India aside, consumer markets, and sort of much more open to tech adoption than even the US. So if you're kind of consumer focused, and then that might be the right thing to do. But if you're kind of providing services to the mining sector, for example, it wouldn't be the right thing to do. So it really depends on what you're doing. In terms of, we kind of love seeing Australian businesses set up in the UK. You know, Western Australia's Agent General, a lady by the name of Angela Kenny. Maybe.
Is the microphone batteries running? Let me just keep talking.
Okay.
Because
everyone kind of, you'll find if you did move to the UK, the expat community is incredibly supportive. So one of the big things that we do, and kind of there's a bunch of people at Australia House that do this, kind of everyone supports one another. Everyone wants to see every Australian business, doesn't matter which state you're from, who moves into the UK succeed. So, but to your question, it really depends on kind of what your aspirations are and kind of who you see as your customers and what the vertical is.
Scott has a question.
Testing.
Scott.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, sorry, no, it doesn't work, Scott.
All right. Ooh, there we go. So could an Australian company get a contractor in the UK who's got like their own proprietary or sole trader business, contract them full time to do like sales and marketing for the Australian company? So the people buying your software are still buying it from the Australian company, but you've got someone on the ground over there?
Yeah, lots of companies, so long as they're happy for those contracts to be with the Australian company, you can have a salesperson on the ground. That salesperson won't create a permanent establishment unless they negotiate and sign contracts on behalf of the Australian company. But if all they're doing is providing leads back to the company here, and your sales team here are kind of negotiating whatever there might be to negotiate in the contract, and somebody here signs the contract, then you're generally okay you're unlikely to create a permanent establishment. And interesting, a lot of companies will do that. They'll kind of test the water a little bit. And, for a lot of companies, they kind of move into the UK market on a proactive basis. A lot are contract driven. So, someone might kind of win one contract and they'll do it that way. And then they find another customer who says, look, I really want to buy your product or service, but my procurement people require me to contract with a UK company. And that would be the catalyst to then kind of set up a UK company.
Any last questions? So, that's what I was going to mention. So, in fact, do you want to I don't think it's working, so you're going to have to use your...
Do you want my microphone?
So this is Kirsty from Purpose, but she, for those who don't know, she used to be the investment manager for the UK trade and industry.
Yep.
UK.
So, yeah, I used to head up the UK's investment arm for Australia and New Zealand. Thank you so much for that, Simon. That was a great presentation. Just kind of following on from Dave's point there, that there are a number of delegations that run each year to the UK for WA companies. The WA government and the British Department of Business and Trade both support those. They typically run around London Tech Week, which is the beginning of June. It's one of the biggest tech festivals around the world. It's huge. And that's a great opportunity if you want to go over and see a whole bunch of stuff about how to expand into the UK all in one go and meet a whole bunch of people. And it's a pretty amazing experience.
It is. It's probably, I think it's the week 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. I think it's the 9th to the 13th of June this year, but it's an incredible week, and there are kind of bolt-on things. So if there's fintech kind of happens just before Tech Week. So depending on kind of what sort of tech you're providing, have a look. And I think there are a couple of missions, I think, going or kind of in the early stages of planning. And London and Partners, who are the Mayor of London's inward investment for the City of London, they are the major sponsors of London Tech Week. So if any of you are thinking of going, even if you don't go as part of a delegation and you want tickets to that, just email me and we can sort them out for you, because they do give them away quite readily. So, but it's a fantastic time to be in London.
It is, and yeah, you'll get support from the WA government and stuff from that if you apply to do those delegations, so definitely worth looking into.
100%. So a few years back, 2002, I was actually on a delegation with, thanks to the WA government and JITSI, who sent a number of us over to the UK on a trade mission. And I've got to be honest, for the week that we were there, it was super informative. Essentially, it throws you into the ecosystem. They kind of line up a number of different events. It was part of London Tech Week as well. And again, you learn so much from that week. I don't think you can get it anywhere else. So there are a number of them. So check out. Where would they go to get the information now?
So about Tech Week?
Well, no, Tech Week you can go. It's from the 9th to the 13th, and you just Google London Tech Week. But I'm talking about the trade missions.
Either reach out to the British Department of Business and Trade, who are based here. Simon mentioned Maria Rennie, who's Consul General, and Finty Clary Steele, who is the Head of Investment over here for WA, and also JETSI. It'll be on the JETSI website, I'm sure, if you Google like JETSI London Tech Week or something.
And I know there's another one. I know that Tribe are doing one. Tribe Ventures always do one, but that'll cost you because it's not being sponsored by WA. So that'll cost you about $7 or $8 grand just for the week, and then obviously you've got to pay for your accommodation and your hotels on top of that. So, but it's definitely worth doing it because it will open up. You'll get to go and have. Because I think you were probably I do recall your face. I think you were at one of the sessions back in 2022.
Yeah, I regularly pop up.
So it was a great session, and you also get to meet a lot of VCs. I know that Plus 8 went last year. Was it last year?
You went last year.
September.
You'll meet VCs, you'll meet accountants, you'll meet kind of companies that are working over there. Founders have gone and done it before and kind of expanded over there what they learned from it. Kind of the different, Simon mentioned different regions, and plus the pros and cons of each different region. Some are more specific to different sectors and have sector expertise. And so there's lots of different ways that you can kind of explore the UK market and kind of get all the information you need in the space of a week.
Yeah, definitely. Again, very, very valuable. Thank you so much. Okay. How do people get in contact with you? I know you had another slide. Do you want to share it?
Yeah, I think it's my email address there. No, I'll send it to you. I'm not very good at promoting myself. But anyway, there's a contact@ouryclark.com. But just a little bit of shameless plugging. We probably are the only professional services firm that has a full-time sound producer on our staff. We have a production studio in the basement of our building. We produce a podcast called Business Without Bullshit. So if you are, it's available on Spotify and kind of the Apple Store. But if you are ever in London and you're not media shy and you would like to be grilled by Andy Oury, who's the youngest son of the Oury family, is a fantastic compere, then do let us know, because we're always kind of happy to kind of talk to people and hear particularly founders' stories. So, but look it up, Business Without Bullshit.
Brilliant.
Great podcast.
Thank you.
Perfect. In 2 weeks' time, so round of applause to Simon.
Thanks, everyone.
Come back.
I'll just make a correction. Thanks so much, Simon. Just a correction on the 2 weeks' time. So it is, you can't win if you're unwell. High-performance hacks for startup founders. So please come along. It's going to be awesome. It's with Kay Foss from Founder Families. So looking forward to that.
Looking forward to it. Brilliant. So back here 2 weeks' time. Have a chance to network now with Simon, get his details, get in contact with him. I know there's a few hands that have gone up. And definitely check it out. We'll also, I definitely want to, because I'm thinking about going to the UK as well in June if I can get permission. And basically, I will try and find some information and we'll try and push something out, I think, to the wider crowd. Thanks, everybody. Come in, check out the breakfast at the back, get your coffee, and we'll see you back here in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Thank you.